All right, ready to rock?
Yes, indeedy.
Awesome. Let's do this. Hey, everybody. I am Ryan Doyle. This is the Vertigo Table, and this is a long time coming. I am sitting down to d20 questions with the geekiest, super geek Mike. Mike, what's up?
Hello, it's me. We did it.
We did it. We did it. A little peek behind the curtain. We did this already, a little over a year ago,
hmm
and whatever technical difficulties prevented it from being a.
Within about 2 hours of the recording, both of us separately had catastrophic storage failures on our devices, and we're
And
and he was like,
4 or 5 days before you had a baby. So
Well,
it's like, all right,
so
see you
it was
never.
6 weeks before the baby was
Oh, okay.
due, and then my wife went into labor 6 weeks early. So, but it's fine. It was only 6 days of labor. So, but it was like, yeah, it was like a couple days after the recording. We were like, hey, let's get let's get this rescheduled. And then I was like, my schedule just changed dramatically. So sorry, I said let's reschedule, but I just lost some time. So, and then we've tried to get together a few times since then, and unfortunately, as anyone in my D&D groups will attest, my schedule has just been a little bit of a challenge. But we're back. We're
We're
doing it.
back. We're in
We made
action.
it.
It's great. I'm pumped because I mean, obviously, I'm a big fan.
Oh, thank you.
We
I'm a big
did
fan of
have,
your channel as well.
yeah. I mean, you were on my radar, but I think our first interaction, you grabbed inspiration from one of my videos of like, don't cancel, just run for the two people who showed up.
I think if that wasn't our first, it was very shortly after. Yeah,
Yeah. Which was cool. I
that
was like,
I
hey,
know that was probably the first time I shouted you out on the channel at the very least.
I was like, Mike knows who I am. And then whatever, we travel in the same circles. And you were kind
Yes,
enough to help make my Dragon Week video happen, which
yes, that's
was
right.
which was dope. And you're so Ross, who goes by Twin Steel on the internet, wanted me to tell you that his wife, your contribution to my video was her favorite. So she liked it better than my stuff and her
Oh,
husband's. So there you go.
oh, well,
Put
thank
that in
you.
your pocket.
Well, I'm glad that I mean I think that video came out great, so I'm very happy to have been a part of it.
And yeah, it's hard to top The Godfather. That yeah, just bringing out Tom. I love that as a lieutenant. I really don't. I don't think I've ever done it for like a for a dragon before, but just the guy who shows up is like, look, it's not no skin off my nose. This could go
Yeah,
one of two ways. It's up to you. That's
I
I don't.
love those
I'm bothered.
characters. For a little context for those who haven't seen my Dragon Week video, it's basically about breaking down why are different shades of dragons have distinct personalities. Why are all green dragons the same? Why are all blue dragons the same? And I go through a couple explanations. And then one of them, like, they could be like mob families. And if you're doing mob family stuff, let's just add some other tropes from mob movies. And so, giving henchmen to your dragon. Who sort of be their representative, they're the face for the dragon at early levels. And I've done that before with other factions, not with a dragon. I don't think I've used very few dragons in my games in that way, but I've definitely had like cults where like the one dude shows up and is just eating breakfast in the tavern, is like, come sit with me, let's negotiate for the magic item you stole. We don't have to make this brutal, we just want it back. And I love that character who I made up on the spot in the bathroom in the middle of a session because I was like, oh, you want to meet with the cult? I have to pee. I'll be right back. I was in the bathroom just washing my hands, like, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And so that was the first time I used a henchman that way. And ever since then, I'm like, that was great. And that's also a trope that I love in movies. So I'm gonna do that some more. And actually, by the time this episode comes out, I will have talked about that in my Daredevil video as well,
Hmm.
about like how can you represent your bad guys with a henchman. Because it was such a good idea to put it in two videos within a month of each other.
I just love a perfectly reasonable evil person that you like. Hey, man, like I know you guys are a bunch of murder hobos anyway. Like, what's it gonna take to get you to go away? You
I
know?
know. I want to do more villain videos. At some point, I want to do one about like how, because I did a video like, hey, it's okay if your villains are unreasonable, breaking down characters like Thanos or Killmonger, who are like, you have a point, you're also wrong and evil and bad, but like they're so justified in their evilness. I want to do one as well that's like, how can you make villains who actually do have compelling arguments and can persuade the heroes? And I'm trying to figure out a way to do it because I'm good at it, but like, how can I suggest a way that you can do it without my method, which was being a pedantic asshole for 20 years and always playing the devil's advocate. There has to be a simpler way, but I haven't cracked that yet, so I haven't made that video yet. So I'm like, well, that's how I did it, and I can't recommend that approach. So I need to sit on this a little bit.
I feel like that personality archetype is well represented in the wider nerd culture, especially
That
the D&D rules
foster it
lawyery.
further. And perhaps there's an argument that you can make a video that can help channel that into a productive way by making it into a villain. But I have to find some other techniques too before I actually make that video. Um,
Well,
but that's
clearly
something
this
I
is an
love
evil
doing. And for
technique.
those who don't know my channel, I love looking at pop culture and stealing lessons from it.
Yeah, I'm just operating off the assumption that you know who Mike is, but there are links down below if you want to check out his channel.
And up
All
here
sorts of cool stuff.
and over there.
So internet points happening now. You have a long running series. I mean, you're in the 60s, 70s of Critical Role Demystified, which
Hmm.
is more than just a fan cast. You are like pulling lessons and techniques out of that, which is cool. To like, hey, this is cool and actionable. Here, you can do it too.
I know it is so tempting. I am a fan of Critical Role. I have been since very early days. It is so tempting when talking about anything you're a fan of to just say, this is great and I love it and it's fun. I really, especially post 2017, when all of our favorite artists fell from grace, I really try not to keep putting people on pedestals. So
Mm,
whenever I talk about someone's art, I don't just want to say, this is great and I love it. Like, I mean, there's a place for that, like Letterbox or something like that. But like when you're actually trying to put out advice, I really want to say, like, okay, Matt Mercer's just a guy.
mm,
If you like his show, if you don't like his show, he's just a guy. Let's take him off of the greatest DM ever. Let's take him off of the ruined D&D. Take him off those pedestals. He's just a guy. What is he doing that works? What is he doing that I don't think works or might not work unless you happen to have his specific players? What are the lessons there? And as well as stuff the players do. But honestly, I've got so much raw material just from what Matt's doing, especially in that first campaign, because
mm.
it's such a heavily narrative campaign, and it's going to be a lot. It's a lot of like, okay, he's taking this narrative approach and this style. How is he doing that? And I'm excited to get to campaign 2, where I strongly disagree with more creative choices where I'm like, oh, there was a miscommunication here with his players because everyone's waiting for everyone else to deliver the plot hooks. Like there's a real problem with campaign 2. People love it because the characters are much better, like much more fleshed out. You know, the way I describe it is like campaign 1 is like Tangled, the Disney movie, where it is playing on a formula we've seen before, but it's also like the best version of that. It's like
Mm.
really, really well done. Campaign 2 is more like Frozen, where it's like, it's a little rockier, but thematically, it's more resonant to more people because it's doing something different. So there's a lot to like about Campaign 2. There's also a lot of episodes where the players are clearly waiting for a plot hook from Matt because that's how Campaign 1 worked. And he's waiting for them to decide what to do because he thinks it's a sandbox game, which is why, like, feel however you want to about Campaign 3. The communication is much better. There's a much better communication between everyone now understands what the campaign is. Campaign 2 is a little rougher in that sense, and I'm very excited to come back to it because I haven't rewatched a lot of those early episodes, and I'm curious if I'll be as harsh or if I'll be like, okay, I think I appreciate now, better what he's doing. But it is fun to kind of go through a lot of these episodes and rewatch them, and find lessons in everything everyone's doing at the table.
And I like that you're taking a critical in like the academic sense. You're taking a critical approach to it all, which is
Pun
powerful.
intended.
Because yeah, sure, pun intended. Yeah, let's say that. Well, I meant it.
Yeah, you can tell
I
it's intended because
wasn't
you said, yeah, sure, afterwards.
sure. Absolutely. What was I saying? Oh, but it is somebody's. It's a lot of folks on route to
Yeah,
this whole hobby now. So celebrate that or lament it. Regardless, it's
yeah,
true. Meet people where they are and approach it that way and say like, hey, one, this is professional tier D&D. You're gonna go, you're watching the Harlem freaking Globetrotters. It's not even the NBA. It's a whole
yeah,
other thing. You're gonna go shoot hoops with your friends. It's gonna be fundamentally different. Hey, know that in the first place. And two, yeah, here's the moves you can learn from doing this.
yeah.
It's
Because I think a lot of other channels very rightfully say you don't need to run your game like Matt Mercer. You don't need to run your game like Brendan Lee Mulligan. You don't have to do what they're doing. They've been doing this for years. They do it in a very different venue than you do. They do it more often than we probably do, you know. But I like that my channel's also like, also, it's not that hard. Like, you actually could do a lot of this yourself. Like, it is not that hard. Yes, there's a lot of reasons that it's intimidating, but if we actually break it down, people are getting confused about what is actually the impressive part. I think one of my favorite examples is episode 24, when they meet one of their most famous NPCs, and it's this black powder merchant who is like this kooky old prospector voice, and everyone's like, oh my gosh, Matt, because Matt is very honest that he made up that character on the spot. And that the most impressive part for someone to care, let me rephrase this, the most impressive part for so many members of the audience is that the character was improvised on the spot and had such a spontaneous, amusing voice, and he's entertaining, and it's such a fun scene. And I'm like, no, 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 you're all missing the point. What's actually impressive, that scene is genuinely impressive because Matt figured out how to introduce an NPC who could deliver black powder so his gunslinger could keep doing gunslinger stuff, but also wasn't just selling black powder to people with guns because this is the inventor of the gun. He has to make sure that Percy feels like he's on the fringe edges of science where only the weirdos and wackos are, because he's in uncharted territory. So there can't just be a shopkeep who's like, oh yes, of course, here's your barrel of black powder, a thing that I sell to lots of people. So he's able to come up with a character who feels like a kooky old wizard because there's nobody else reputable in this corner of science. That's what's actually impressive, is that he did that on the spot. The voice doesn't matter. I'm 70 whatever episodes into the series, and I've never really talked about voices because like I will at some point talk about voices on the channel. Like, they're all voice actors. I'm sure I will do it. It's not the most important part of Critical Role. What's actually impressive is that that is an example of Matt understanding what his players want from their characters. You know, what is the core fantasy of his gunslinger, is that he's the inventor of the gun. If he just walks into a shop and is like, oh yes, you have a gun, I have gunpowder for you, you've broken the character. And that guy just
Mm,
feels a
mm,
lot
mm.
less impressive. And they kind of messed that up in the cartoon because they didn't understand that themselves. Where I'm just sitting here and like, no, you all have missed the point. That's not what makes Victor a good character. But again, that, like, an insight like that is literally like why I made the series in the first place. Is because I was like, nobody talks about this. Why this is actually the reason that this matters. So I guess I need to make a video about every episode of Critical Role so I can talk about this one thing.
You're getting there. And yeah, I love
I'm,
it. And I
I'm
will
making
say,
progress.
like, even if you're not in the critter camp, right? I think it is still very approachable. I mean, I'm sure you get mostly Critical Role fans tuning into that series, but like, you can learn a ton of lessons without ever. Honestly, you might even be in a better position if you're coming in cold
I try
to
to make sure that
extract.
people who have not seen Critical Role or haven't watched the first campaign in a long time are still getting enough context to be able to follow along.
Yeah, and it shows, especially if you have like a D&D background, right? It's especially season one. It's all the classics, all the
Yep.
hits. But beyond that, I mean, what is that? That's like maybe 10% of what you're bringing to the table these days. You just did one on recapping, which is very interesting because that is
Yes.
an aspect of my game that I'm like, oh, here's something I have not considered in years, right? Like I just
Yeah.
like made up my mind a while ago, and now I don't even think about it. It's like, yeah, this is something I could like revisit. I could come back to. So you want to give us a little taste of what we were talking about with that one?
Yeah. Yeah. In that video, I kind of did the same thing. I was reassessing personally where I am on the spectrum of like, do I want to do recaps for my players? Because I haven't done them for years because I've got a system in place where my players do them. But I'm starting a new group, and I think it's going to work better if I do recaps for them. And literally, I sat down for a game with them, and they're like, hey, can you recap what happened in the last game? And I was like, oh, yes, yes, for sure. I was already going to. So I was like, okay, I made the right call. This group does want recaps from the GM. So kind of going through the video was a way for me to kind of go through the different options of how to recap, a little bit of advice in, how to do so and why you do so. And, do you let the players do it? Do you do it yourself? What method does that take? And then it was also all couched in this narrative framing device because I got a narrative running through this year's videos. So it was also the characters in the video are trying to do recaps. And it was sort of a fun way to uh, literally demonstrate the value of recaps.
I was gonna say there's like a Johnny do, Johnny don't like best practices example going on the whole time, which is fun. I didn't want to spoil that aspect of the whole thing, but yes, there's wow. that did nothing for me. Like the bad version of the It's like,
Right,
this is
right,
what
exactly.
just
It's like that
happened.
didn't
It's like,
help at all.
I have no that doesn't, yeah, that's not what I was looking for in this
Yeah,
transaction. Oh man, love it. Okay, everyone go check out Mike's channel. In the meantime, I hope you got some dice ready.
I
I'm gonna
do.
ask you to roll a d20. We're gonna
I
get into
have
these
my
cards.
first dice set I ever bought.
Hmm.
I still use them. All right, D20.
D20, please and thank you.
13.
13. What is on your Dungeon Master screen slash in your DM toolbox in your kit?
Right, I have this sort of nice fancy DM kit which I use to like house minis and initiative trackers, which is really nice. The stuff on the back right now is just like how much it costs for lodging, things that I can
Hmm.
never remember. But I do need to. I have shifted over to playing a little more 2024 D&D, and I do need to look at their GM screen and see, okay, what else did they put on the back? I have this screen, I just haven't really gone through it yet and been like, okay, is this useful? I might stick it behind my next game, behind my other screen, and just see like, okay, how helpful is this? Do I like this screen? Because I really didn't like the first 2020, the first 2014 screen was real bad, and the second one was great. So I'm curious if they got it right with this one as well.
The second one has the conditions on
Yes,
it,
so I think
and
both
the
of them may have had the conditions. I'm not sure, but I
trying to
think that
remember
the
the two
second one
versions.
definitely did.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember the old one, and then they had like the wilderness one, which was like right up my alley, but not the version of that I'm looking for.
I have not given as many of the other ones a spin. I have a few. I think I have a Strahd one, but I don't have any of the
Oh,
others. I think.
cool. All right, give me another D20.
Yeah, 17.
Moving on up. Uh, what is your favorite thing that happens at the table? Like, what's the juice? What's the high that you're chasing in D&D all the time?
I think I honestly love when the players start taking control of the narrative in
Hmm.
terms of like, okay, we have this villain. What can we do to deal with them? Whether it's let's figure out how to ambush them, let's try to get rid of their allies, let's um something other than just run away and hide. When they actually start being like, okay, what can we do to start using the tools of the world that we've learned about so far? And like, what are our resources? What are our limitations? Like when they actually start not just picking up what you're putting down, but also start like generating their own ideas, that's fantastic to me. That is the juice where it's like, okay, you guys have enough exposure to the world that you can remember allies you've met or potential allies for the villain, or whatever you want to do, that you want to go find his lair or whatever it is. Like when they start generating the next adventure, it's like, oh, okay, cool, it's more work for me, but it means that they're really clicked into the story and they're taking it seriously in a way that I really enjoy.
I really love that answer, and I'm going to dig deeper. If you do, how do you go about like encouraging that, setting the table for that? How do you get the players to like one, understand that they have permission to do that, and two, give them the tools they need?
um I think that's a good question. Probably the first step is just to make sure that there's not the constant narrative breathing down their throats at all times.
Hmm.
Like it works better with, I think, more either episodic campaigns or even something like Strahd where it's more of a sandbox. If you're doing like your MacGuffin hunt where there's like literally no time for them to do anything and there's all this stuff in front of them and they only go after um how do I phrase this? If you keep giving them like you're going after the 9 rings of power, whatever it is, the rod of 7 parts, they know what the adventure kind of looks like. I think the trick is to also give them I don't know. I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this. Like, give them the option to pick up other missions so that they know they're in a
Hmm.
little bit more control of what they do next. Whether it's a job board, whether it's someone coming along and saying, but also, can you help me find my cranberries? I don't know what it is, but like, whatever it is to like basically give them an understanding that they don't have to go to the next thing right away. They can go looking for what they want to do next. And eventually, I think, clearly I haven't cracked the code. I don't know how exactly it happens, so this is something I need to give more thought to probably before I turn into full on advice. But I think by making sure that they are the ones choosing the next adventure every time, you open up the possibility for them to realize they are in a lot more control
Hmm.
over where they go next, and that I think means that they can start building their own adventure if they want to. I think.
Yeah, and like, yeah, sorry to put you on the spot with a hard one because like
Well,
I'm
the other
interested because
idea,
it's
the other approach, because I think so much about villains, is to have the villain basically say like, "Don't come after me, don't mess with me," and then walk away. Because sometimes the villains will be like, "Oh," the hero's like, "Oh, I want to get him. I want to get him so bad. How can
mm.
we get that guy? What can I do?" But I don't know how to turn that into actionable advice yet either. But those are sort of the two approaches that I think have worked. And I would need to drill down a little bit more and analyze the pros and cons.
Yeah, it's very I mean I think there's a lot of insight there because we do spend a lot of time trying to create dramatic tension, enforce some sort of time. Everyone's like, have you heard of Blades of the in the Dark? They have clocks. It's the it's
Hmm.
the most innovative thing of all time. It's a pie slice. It's like the game,
Right.
sorry, but things are happening that make you want to do stuff. And I think part of it is 5e's rest system and trying to like get around that. It's just the mechanics of the game. But yeah, you can definitely overcorrect and be like, all right, you got 20 minutes to find this thing that's been buried for centuries. I don't know why, but you got to go now. And that doesn't, that's, it is functionally railroading the players when it's just like, well, do this or the world ends. It's like, all right, I guess that's what we're doing.
It's
Giving
kind
them
of
room to
also just
breathe is huge.
adventure design for 5e for a lot of their bigger adventures. I know this is one of the big problems with Tomb of Annihilation is they're like, okay, the clock is ticking and people are literally dying. You got to find the source of the curse. And then you get to Omu or no, Chult, just the overall, um, just to the island. And it's like, do you want to do some dinosaur races? And it's like, but we had the ticking clock and the end of the world. Like, and video games have this problem too, but like with video games, you know it's artificial. Like you
Mm,
know that if you as Kratos go and explore a beach with Atreus and like find some random crap, you're not actually causing anyone to die any faster because the game put that there for you to play with. With D&D, we're asking our players to keep track of time more than happens typically in open world video games. So like they kind of can't do that, and I think that's kind of a problem with the trend of D&D toward heroic fantasy.
mm,
Kind of by definition means they have to give us heroic fantasy adventures, and a lot of those don't give a lot of time for shenanigans or for just, choosing your own adventure. There's not a lot of room for the characters in Lord of the Rings to strategize because they're reacting to stuff a lot. But Lord of the Rings is still kind of the template for heroic fantasy for a lot of us. Dragonlance, those novels are much praised as modules. They were much reviled because they were very railroady. This is sort of the problem with, and I like heroic fantasy D&D. This is one of the pitfalls of that style, is that it becomes very, very easy to just do your narrative end of the world like, well, we've got no time to do anything else, and that is a challenge and something that I'm going to talk about in a video that may be out by the time this comes out, or maybe not yet, where I talk about Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is a you've got to save the world storyline that also has a lot of stops for shenanigans. And I'm like, how did they do it? Can you
mm.
can you do that in your own game? Will people go along with it? Because that's kind of the challenge, is that players want to go for, they want to solve the problem, right? And if they don't feel like they can, they'll feel daunted by it. How can you also make sure that they're giving them other stuff to do? And it's tough, you know. I haven't written that script yet, so I don't know if I have an answer.
I look forward to it because how did they do that as far as Avatar goes is rich ground to cover. There are
Yep.
some amazing storytelling lessons, let alone adventure design stuff that you can
Yep.
pull from that. Ooh, so good. Um, all right, roll a d20. I'll let you off the hook for that.
19. We're going up.
And on up. What is your concept for the next campaign or game, even if, or especially if it's not going to happen?
I really want to. I want to put together a mega dungeon, but I haven't really cracked the the premise of it. I think that would be fun. But I do have one that I want to do that's a little bit more like it's kind of a sandbox mega dungeon blend where it's like a a fissure, like it's this like broken canyon network. So you could enter it from lots of different places, but basically like the ruins of a fallen civilization, like in sort of Atlantis style, are in the canyon. So it's a lot of exploration and a lot of like basically different discrete dungeons that are all in the ruins of these different civilizations. And I have had that in the back of my head for like a decade and just have never developed it because it would be so much work up front. You know, that's
Mhm.
not one where you can just sort of like, okay, you're gonna fight these goblins and then you'll find a clue. It's like, no, no, no. You could do a lot. This is a real open world, and that would require a lot of work. But I have sort of like started. Well, what if I took a couple notes on that today and then made a couple more notes tomorrow? And what might that look like? So I've started thinking about that a little bit more.
Nice. Yeah, I think the way to tackle something giant like that is by like subdividing. Even if you look at
Yeah.
like Undermountain, right? Like there's a bad way to do it where it's like
Yes.
this has nothing to do with what we were just talking about,
Yeah.
but you have to do a little bit of that.
Yeah. And fellow YouTuber Mystic Arts DM has been doing a lot of
Mm.
videos about dungeons and just did a mega dungeon live stream, which I've only seen like the first 20 minutes of because I haven't really sat down and watched the whole thing. But it is literally about like, okay, how can we break down, excuse me, sorry, but really breaking down the project into like more discrete chunks, like how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. You have to
Mm.
start focusing this in. I also have an idea for a dungeon called the Temple of the Elephant, which would actually be a play on the parable of the elephants, which is an old, I think, an Indian proverb, um, where it's these blind men approach an elephant, and each one of them touches a different part of the elephant and feels that an elephant must be this. And a blind man touches the leg, and it's like, oh, an elephant is like a tree, and or a blind man touches the ear, says, oh, an elephant is like a palm leaf, and sort of each one gets only a taste of it. And the dungeon would kind of play on that same idea, where you're based on what part of the dungeon you enter, you think that the villain is X or the villain is Y, and it's only by exploring more of the dungeon or entering that final chamber that you realize, oh, this is not at all what I thought it was. That's the hope. And I did a version of that in a very old fourth edition game, but I'm like, I think I could flesh that out, really lean into the elephant theming a little more, because at that time it was just like three linked dungeons. But like, oh, what if it was a little bit more complicated? So that's another one where like that might be my next medium sized project is finally building the Temple of the Elephant.
That is very intriguing because the old like Scooby-Doo like was this all along is like fun, but
Yeah,
the unraveling mystery, like the more complex version of that is always super appealing to me. And hey, man, maybe that's part of the mega dungeon. It's a cool thing about mega dungeons. It's all in there.
maybe. We'll see.
All right, give me one more d20 roll.
Natural
Badunk.
20.
Boom,
There was
got
only one
there.
way to go and keep our trajectory, and we kept it. And next, it's going to be a natural one. That's my prediction.
Well, you get a lightning round is in play if we get doubles. But
Okay.
what is your best move, your trick, your dungeon master hack, your superpower? What's Super Geek Mike's superpower?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, I don't think it's voices because I think I used to think I was better at voices than I've now realized I don't think I'm quite as good at them as I used to be. Um, I
Wild
I
overconfidence, definitely a superpower.
I know I struggle with dungeon design. I do think it's villains. I think I'm pretty good at making pretty hateable villains.
Hmm.
I think that I'm pretty good at figuring out what my players are going to react well to make them really dislike the villain without just making them all like baby eaters. I think it's very easy to go, and I don't disparage that. I think that works too. I think I'm good at targeting my players a little more specifically and saying like, okay, I like the villains who are going to read our heroes for filth and sort of like know a little bit more about them than they know about themselves and that sort of thing, and sort of get more psychological with them to the point where it's actually harder for me to play your more like simple-minded villains. Like I don't mean like your brutes and like your attacking hordes of orcs or whatever. I just mean more like it's hard for me to find a middle ground between the savage horde and the supervillain, the Machiavellian mastermind. I'm like, there has to be a range in between. Like, not everyone can be Ra's al Ghul, and not everyone can be Killer Croc. Like you have to have your penguin in there somewhere, and I'm not very good at that part, but I think I'm pretty good at playing the mastermind without. This is the trick, and I don't know if I'm always as good at this, but I don't think I make them too formidable that the heroes feel like they can't defeat them. I think
Mm.
I still make sure that they feel fallible, but that they talk a big game and that they feel like they have a lot of power. At least this has been the case, at least when I've run Strahd. It's usually gone pretty well. And I've applied it to a couple other villains that have had some good interactions with the party as well. And it's I think a lot about villains. I've read a lot of comic books and watched a lot of movies and TV shows, and I think that that's sort of my one of my big um skills.
So often in these heroic stories, the hero is not the protagonist. It looks like they are, but it's actually the bad guy who's doing stuff, and the hero's just gotta react, respond, and that's why we end up with, I mean, comic books, right? Like
Yeah,
Batman's cool, but he's nothing without his the cadre of villains that come along with him. Like, give me the
right.
Penguin and the Riddler and the Joker, and like,
There's a reason most comic book stories start with the bad guy does something and the superhero reacts because bad guys push the heroes into action.
yes. And kind of circling back to what we were saying before about the limitations of superheroic fantasy pushing you into like world challenging events. The and you recently did a video on the Avengers, but the
Yes.
moment in that like arc where portals are opening from like another dimension from outer space and they're invading to get the whichever stone and whatever Infinity
Yes.
Stone is on Earth, because there's like a few of them. It's like, no, you guys caused this to happen. Like Earth was some backwater, nobody cared about it
Yeah.
until your power creep forced the dungeon master slash storyteller to escalate to the point where we are now. This is your fault. You put all the
Yeah.
magic items in one place. You've been assembling the rod of seven parts. That has repercussions.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I love villains. I love epic stories. I think and I understand why it happened. I know why villains lurk in the lowest levels of dungeons historically. Like it worked really well for the way the game used to be played. It doesn't really work as well for heroic fantasy, which is why I think if you're playing more OSR style games, that doesn't really bother you, right? There's a
mm,
reason why Sunless Citadel was so popular, even though it's got bad guys lurking in the dungeon at the lowest level of it. Like it worked for that playstyle. It doesn't work as well for heroic fantasy. It's a lot harder for people who come from our more modern sort of playstyle to reconcile that playstyle with older adventures where it's just one bad guy lurking in a dungeon. At the lowest level. We have to like find ways, and this is what I just talked about in my Daredevil video, or will have talked about by the time this video comes out. You have not seen it yet, but it's about like a little bit like, okay, how can you make sure that you're still interacting with the villain in a meaningful way before your final fight, wherever it is? It's why I like something like the Caves of Chaos. I enjoy that
mm,
one more than some other low level dungeons because it's still, or old school dungeons, I mean to say, because as far as translating it to modern heroic adventure fantasy, because it lends itself well enough to it. It's not just a bad guy lurking in a dungeon, you're fighting your way through it and they're just sitting there not doing anything about it. It's a much more reactive space. Everything is much more dynamic there, which is I'm sure is how a lot of old school dungeons are meant to be played. There's sort of a degradation in terms of um the loss of that communication across
mm.
time, which is a whole other conversation I'm sure we could have. But the point is, I think that it's sometimes tricky to figure out how to make older adventures work with a modern style, and because a lot of D&D villains were not the protagonists in the way that we think of in stories. They were the ones waiting for the heroes to come and slay them. At least the way they were presented. I'm not saying that's how people necessarily ran them, but that's sort of how the adventure is laid out. And I think maybe there's also, you know, there's an argument to be made that maybe in the old days the creatures would move around more in the dungeon. But then because of how we're used to video games working, now
Mm.
we just think of everyone just waiting in their corners. And because now we have an argument about balanced encounters. And especially I was guilty of this when I was running fourth edition. It's like I wouldn't want to move my bad guys around because I balanced the encounter for that room. And like I don't want people to run and don't want people to come in from the next room. I balanced the encounter for that room. So sort of shedding a lot of those ideas as well of like you can't just lock people into their little programmed areas because this isn't a video game. You have to actually have your villains and your adversaries be a lot more dynamic and be more proactive.
Nah, not to go too far down this rabbit hole that you've
No, please.
opened for us, but I have
I
this pet
literally can't
theory.
roll any better. So as long as we spend on this question is fine with me.
Sure thing. Um, I have a theory that a lot of the long arc of history of D&D is you have these like war gamer men, adults,
Hmm.
who given an army of goblins are going to strategically play those goblins. You know,
Yes.
the caves of chaos. The second you go and kill some people are going to start to respawn to maybe come for the keep on the Borderlands. I also like that. But maybe my favorite part of that is there's a built-in reason, like, why are all these monsters hanging out in these caves together? This is
Hmm.
freaking weird. Yes, it is weird, and there's a reason, and you should be worried about it and figure out
Right.
why. Then you pass the torch from those war gamer dudes in Wisconsin generally to 12-year-old boys. And the antagonism that comes from that style of play when I am the god of this world and can do whatever I want,
Hmm.
and you failed your savior dead, whatever, becomes less fun and maybe a little more gatekeepy, perchance.
Hmm.
And then we correct for that. There are a lot of, and rightfully so. I think it's the pendulum swinging in the opposite direction and like maybe overcorrecting. But there's a lot of checks in place for the DM not to be a total jerk, because I think they were for a long time. And that's how we end up with a very static dungeon where there isn't that transmission of knowledge or that implicit in the book, like, here's how to strategically play these monsters in a way that are going to really challenge your players,
Yeah.
because you can overdo that and make the game no longer fun.
I think there's definitely an argument that those are. I think it is more accurate to say that people played lots of different ways in every different era. The prevailing influence of each of those eras probably took those forms. You know, like I talk about this whenever I talk about fourth edition, is that the designers of fourth edition designed the game that they thought people were running. Well, you're
Mm,
not running a lot of evil parties, and you're not. So we're not going to include evil alignment for your characters. You're not really playing theater of the mind, so we're not going to include um, any rules for how that works. We're just going to use squares instead of feet. There's also an argument that that is because they were developing a VTT, which history repeats itself as far as you're adapting a edition for a VTT that may never materialize. But the argument still stands. I think they were designing the game that they thought people not only wanted, but were already playing some version of. And I think the community didn't just say, no, that's not the game we're playing. They said, it's not your right to tell us what we're playing. I don't have to play that way, but you do play that way, as was the Ghost argument. And the community said, but I don't have to. I don't want to feel like I have to. I don't want to think only in squares. I want to run it in feet. I don't want
mm,
to only play good characters. I want to play evil characters if I want to. Like I want the option to. And I think that yes, there were always people in third edition 3.5 playing without a grid or playing um evil parties, whatever it was. Wizards wasn't seeing that, so they designed the game that they thought those people wanted, and it did not did not go over well for a lot of reasons. I think fourth edition, whatever problems you might have with it, would have gone down a whole lot better if it had just been called Dragon Fight Game instead of Dungeons and Dragons.
mm,
It just
mm,
was not. It was more clearly heroic fantasy than people wanted. I think this is definitely a D&D problem in general. People get very squirrely when D&D takes sides in long running debates. Where, like, for example, there was an argument in the rules that just played out when they were playtesting them, like, oh, should the GM crit? How do you do
mm,
that? And they took it out, and people didn't like that. And it's like, but you've been debating this for so long. Like, we just we just picked an option for you. Well, people don't feel like that's D&D's job. If they want a game that's going to make a a judgment call, they pick a different game. They like D&D because it gives them the freedom to keep having those debates, which puts the designers in a really awkward position. Yes, a lot of that is self-imposed. I want to be very clear. It is D&D's fault that they want to be all things to all people.
mm.
But whenever they try not to be, the community gets really pissed at them. And I think that's really interesting where it's like every time I saw them try to make a there was a lot of choices in the playtest that I didn't really follow along with because I was, getting ready to have a baby and then having a baby. But so I wasn't really following the playtest day to day or anything like that. But every once in a while I would see like, oh, they picked a side in a long running debate in the D&D community and people didn't like it. And it's like, well, yeah, because that's not why people come to D&D. They don't want D&D to pick sides, which is such a tricky position to be in when you're making the game because we've had this community splintering from the beginning, but all still staying together, which is always going to be tricky to make a new addition to the game for them.
Yeah, I think it is the power of D&D. It is the reason it's got staying power, even though whatever, it almost died. It's still the the biggest name out there because it has that broad appeal, because there are such a diversity of ways to play it, and knowing that and starting from that and kind of preserving that is always in their interest. And I
Mhm.
think there is sort of a pitfall in even the whole, like, you want to play test the game, absolutely, but like an online survey is not maybe the perfect sample. Let's put it that way.
Right.
You're hearing from the people you pissed off and maybe not from the people who are perfectly content or aren't terminally online, who are, not in the rarefied air that we are, thinking of D&D all day, every freaking day.
That's the bigger problem, and I just have to hope that some of the people taking those playtests were running games for normies, because like I just have to trust that they were out there like actually watching some games being run and seeing how it was played. And so and so far I am enjoying um 524 just fine.
Hmm.
I don't agree with every choice, but like generally I'm like, okay, I'm digging it. I don't have any real issues at this point. We'll see. I've only run one session so far with the actual monster manual. So I've
Hmm.
only run session with actual all three books together. So we'll see. My party's only level 3, but so far I'm like, yeah, all right. So far so good. I don't have any real strong feelings about this edition.
I'm in the same boat, and I think my strongest feeling is like, man, I wish I just had a new thing. Like, why do I just? This is just
Right.
slightly different enough that I need to look everything up now because all
That
of
is
my
the
assumptions are
downside.
wrong
That is the
potentially.
downside for me, and that is the problem with any sort of system mastery. And I know that you know, from watching a lot of Critical Role, running an actual play myself, listening to other actual plays for the first like 5 years of 5e up until COVID. Like I was running like 4 or 5 games at a time, not
Hmm.
weekly, but ongoing games or a part of them. I was deep in it. So I learned a lot of rules. Not all of them correctly. I've gotten some things wrong still, but generally pretty well immersed. So it is going to be hard to like remember. Like I actually just realized like, oh, I'm 4 sessions in. We've run 4 sessions and we have been not been using weapon mastery. My players don't know about it.
Oh,
And I think that's kind of probably also because I need to get them onto paper character sheets instead of just using D&D Beyond. Um, there's a whole other debates, but I need to
mhm.
print them out and start highlighting some things and make sure they know. I think it's going to help them more than they realize. I know it's convenient. I know they like it. I think they're going to appreciate paper character sheets a little bit more, but I need to figure that out. But there is always the challenge of like I memorized this one and I liked that I memorized it, so I have to kind of grapple with that. The one thing I just wish we'd had during the playtesting, and I know we're digging up 2 years old debates at this point, but like
It's a tradition.
I just wish they'd come out and said, this is what we're doing. Right? Just tell us what, because all we're left to conclude is the C-suite said they wanted a new edition, and you guys were told don't change it too much. That's really how it feels. I am sure that if Chris Perkins and Jeremy Crawford gone too soon or gone on their separate ways or whatever it is, gone
Retire in
from
peace.
retired in peace, exactly. Um, but I'm sure that if they'd just been told make a new addition to D&D, we would have gotten something a little bit different. Better? I don't know. Worse? I don't know. It would have been different. But they were told it still has to be compatible with 5e because they had announced more books. that were supposed to come out. So it was like you can't really like we saw this we've seen this happen so many times before. People don't go see Blue Beetle and Aquaman when you've just told them that you're rebooting the universe in a year, right?
Hmm.
Also,
Hmm. Hmm.
I have not heard great things about the new Aquaman movie, but the point still stands. Uh, you don't want to neuter your ongoing projects. That's why they stopped publishing fourth edition stuff for like a year until fifth edition came out because they were like, let Magic pay for it. Like no one's there's no point in selling more fourth edition stuff when we're not going to be making something compatible with fourth edition. They put out a couple of like compatible adventures that could be run with third edition and fourth edition and D&D Next. So that was already like a very weird sort of style of adventure, but they only put out like 4 of them. And that was all they did for like a year. That was very, very different, a very different time. Obviously, fifth edition's a more successful game, so they couldn't just stop publishing stuff. But part of me just does wish they'd come out and said like, just treat this like an errata. Okay, cool,
Mm.
sounds good. Or if they'd come out and said like, the problem we have is that the encounters are boring. Okay, great. I can agree or disagree with what things you're doing now because I know what your design goal is. Right now, it's weird because like I like the addition I'm seeing. I I don't know how to judge it based on the old one because I don't know what their goal was with it. So I just have to come in and be like, I like it. I'm liking what I'm seeing. I don't know how to engage with it critically when I don't know what your objective was necessarily, but like, at the end of the day, I have a new game and I'm liking it fine. So maybe I'm wrong. maybe my whole thing that maybe I've been wrong for 2.5 years and actually this was fine. I don't know. We'll see.
No, fine. I think is like the is. I agree with you. Let's put it that
I
way.
just part of
I
me
think
just
that's a
really
fair
wishes
assessment.
I knew what the design goal was. Even if I didn't agree with it. But again, that's the problem that D&D can't do it. They can't do that. MCDM can come out and say we want to make a
Mm.
cinematic, tactical, and the other phrases which I don't remember now because that video is years old. But they put out a video. They're like, "This is what we're doing." Critical Role didn't do that with Daggerheart, but they put out like more hours of Critical Role than there are of The Simpsons or Grey's
Mm.
Anatomy combined. So
Is that
you
true?
can.
That's wild,
Oh yeah, campaign
man.
one
Huh.
was longer than The Simpsons by episode 100. Um,
Wow, wow.
yeah, there's a lot of Critical Role. So like you can go and find out what tone the game is probably going to be like, right? And then they'll come out and say like, "Oh, you can do this." Pardon me. They'll come out and say, "Oh, you can do this and this with that." They can start telling you about other things you can also do with it. But you do know if you're picking up Daggerheart, you're going to be playing Critical Role style games by sort of default. At least that's what the game's going to be leaning towards. One assumes. At the time we're recording this, Daggerheart is going to be released in like 7 days, so we'll find out soon if there's a lot more to say about that. I'm hoping there is. I'm a Critical Role based channel, at least in part. I'm hoping I'm going to have a lot to say about Daggerheart. But with D&D, don't people want it to be D&D, but everyone has a different idea of what D&D is. So you can't come out and say the problem with D&D is that they can come out and say specific things. Like they are absolutely right when they say the druid is too daunting for new players. I 100% agree.
Mm.
Every change they pointed out about the druid, 1000%. The ways they're generally solving them, as far as I've seen, I haven't dug into it too much. I don't have a druid in my current game, and I'm not a player right now. But what I've seen so far makes sense to me. We'll find out how it actually plays when I get my hands on it. I just wanted something like that for everything, right? Just come out right out and say it's if you come out and say we want everybody at level 3 because it works better, great, fantastic. Can you just tell us what you are doing with the entire game? What is your plan for the entire game? But again, you know, books selling fine from what I hear. Maybe not the numbers they wanted, but we knew that that was not going to happen because only the people in the C-suite thought it was going to make gangbusters numbers. Everyone else knew it. Everyone else had, I think, much more reasonable expectations for the game, other than the people who wanted the new edition, which is the problem. I made a whole video about that, and people were like, it's not failing." I'm like, guys, I didn't think it was failing. I think the C-suite's going to think it's a failure, and that's a very different conversation.
Yeah, precisely, precisely. And I think all of those conversations missed the nuance of like, hey, like talk about Wizards in the Coast and Hasbro as two different entities. Yeah, they're the same thing, but like one is working for the other. You have a creative team who are being told what to do by people who make
Right.
10 to 100 times as much money as they do and have no idea really what's going on. They
Yeah.
thought Sigil was a video game for 2 years, and they were like, "Oh wait, no, cancel."
Yeah.
Right before
Or
it
it may
launched.
be
Like,
more
okay,
accurate to say the D&D team is not the same as Hasbro. Wizards of the
yeah,
Coast itself is kind of, I don't know. It doesn't really matter at a certain point where the division is in that front because I don't
mm,
think it affects us in any meaningful way. Right. All that really helps us know is that I'm a fan of people developing the game, and I'm not a fan of the people running the company. And I don't really care where the line is in between. Like, it doesn't really affect me to know the specifics in it because it doesn't matter at that point. We're splitting hairs. Yeah,
mm-hmm,
but yeah,
mm-hmm.
it is like I part of me wishes the folks at D&D had a chance to just make what they wanted to make, but I also know that that was just never going to happen. Like, not with the success of 5e, which I'm a big fan of. Yeah, I like that 5e did well. I like 5e, I so far like 524. So, you know, it's just weird that like after 2.5 years of hype, the conclusion is, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. I'm liking it. I think I'm glad I picked up the new books. I think I'm going to keep using them over the old books. I don't know. I don't know if we need this much hype for this. And part of that too is like the hype was also all tied into all of the drama around D&D, which we don't need to rehash either. But like all of the unforced errors of Wizards of the Coast and all of the very reasonable if anyone wants to boycott the company. I get it. Corporations are not your friend, but like even all of that was like too much hype for these books.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like the conclusion is, I don't know, man. I'm perfectly happy that this is the first edition that like I'm really running for my wife. You know what I mean? It's
Huh.
like it's right. She's liking it fine, as far as I can tell. Everyone at the table is liking it fine. We did not need to be as exhausted in this all as deep in the paint in this book as we were. But that's kind of why I'm glad that I didn't make a lot of videos about the play tests and all that stuff. Because I remember early on, like when we didn't know what the game was. It's like when they put out the first playtest, someone was like, "Oh, well, this isn't gonna pair well with this," and I was like, "Guys, just assume they're gonna change everything. We have
Mm-hmm.
to." But we don't. But they weren't making videos with that assumption because they were not told what they were doing. Now that we've seen the whole thing, I think it's easier to get a sense of like what it was because they could like show us art and show us layout and all this stuff. And like honestly, if they had just relayed out the books, I would have been happy with that too. I I will say I hate the layout of the monster manual so much. I hate it. I hate it. I'm from fourth edition. That was where I cut my teeth, where all the goblins were together. So
Yes.
like this is moving way further away from what I liked. But you know what? Whatever. I've been playing this game for a long, long time. I'm not gonna get them to change at this point. I lost that battle, so I'll make my peace with it. It's not the hill to die on.
I I can't imagine whatever sixth edition or 5.30, whatever the heck, whatever the next one. There's no way they're going to organize the monster manual in the same way because it is wild that like I've been doing this a little while. I should be able to find things fairly easily. Like, come on,
The thing
it's bad. It's real
I
bad.
understand the problem they thought they were solving. I think the problem is the problem that you think you're solving is solved by an index, right? The problem they
Yes.
described is like they use the same example every time. They say it makes no sense that if you're looking for gelatinous cube, you have to go to O. Like you should look under G. I'm like, okay, then break up the oozes. This is such an easy fix. You solved it because you made that problem by putting one creature type in one category together, which you didn't do for any of the other. You didn't lump all the Fae together. You didn't lump all
Mhm.
the yes, you lumped the dragons together. Okay, but you didn't lump all the creatures with the dragon subtype. You lumped all the dragons together. That's not the same thing. Like
Hey,
oozes is
please
the
lump
only
the
one.
dragons
If
together.
this is
Come
the
on.
problem, break up the oozes. No, I don't think they just should have lumped it. I don't think they should have just lumped up the dragons. They also needed to lump up the devils and the demons because by breaking them up, you lost all the introductory lore, and
Mm.
that sucks. That bothers me. And this is not an exclusively fifth edition problem. This is a trend that's been happening across many editions that we keep losing lore because, and I will say, part of the problem is that the lore is problematic. Like in some places, there's a reason why Groomsh is getting less and less represented because the relationship with orcs is changing. I think that's maybe not the solution they should have gone with, but again, I think they chose the wrong argument. Maybe I'll make a whole video about that because I do have some more feelings about that than just the monster organization. But the other thing with like losing lore and all this stuff is that they don't want to world build in their books anymore because they want to have different discrete campaign settings. So rather than, because what they used to do is they would have, this is how the game works, and we're building a D&D world that works the way the game works.
Hmm.
Well, now you can't do that because you have something like Eberron, which people love, and it doesn't work the way the default book works. They want your books to still work if you're running Eberron, so there's a lot less world building in the books. And I get it, and I don't like it. And like I said, this might be a whole other video. Other than that stuff, I generally like. I like the game fine. I think the approach to world building, and again, I haven't read I haven't read the Dungeon Master's Guide. Maybe more of that is in there. I haven't really taken the full spin with that yet. So hopefully more of the lore and sort of cultural stuff is in there. But like, because that's what they promised us, is that there was going to be a little bit more onboarding in there. But I don't have high hopes because I'm like, I just, this has been happening for several editions now, where we're losing lore in each of the core
Hmm.
books over time because it has to be applicable to more and more settings. So I don't think 24 is suddenly going to solve that problem because it's been happening since honestly at least fourth edition.
I'm in the position to feel obligated to say the new DMG is way better, and
Yes,
it leaves me wanting a lot more. I was really
and that's
pumped.
and that is the hardest book to get right. I honestly think because
Um,
as you and I and our YouTube channels can clearly reflect, we have a lot of strong feelings about what advice is useful to new game masters. I don't think that we were ever, I don't think anyone was ever going to get, anyone who's really plugged in was ever going to get the perfect Dungeon Master's Guide that gave all the information that we all wanted. I think that from what I've seen, I like what I've seen. I need to actually go through it the whole thing and sort of familiarize myself more with it. But like, I love the little Greyhawk section. I'm actually kind of tempted to run a Greyhawk game now, which I never have been because I never cared about Greyhawk at all. But I read that bit and I was like, okay, I get it. I get Greyhawk now. It very much feels like it's like I just talked about. It was a world that worked on the rules of old school D&D, but I think you could still have a lot of fun there. I think I now have a better sort of sense of the top down idea of what is Greyhawk than I ever used to. But um, no DNG was ever going to fully satisfy us specifically.
hmm. I was actually pumped for the Greyhawk inclusion though, not because I'm like want to go back to Greyhawk, but because like give me something new.
Yeah,
After a decade of Forgotten Realms, and then I thought we were going to Greyhawk. I didn't think we were going to go back to Forgotten Realms. I thought it was going to be
see, I like that
a
the Forgotten Realms is
shift to
getting its
things.
own setting book rather than being the default. I like that a lot because I think the problem I've never liked Forgotten Realms as the default setting, not just because like I have my own personal disagreement with the way the Forgotten Realms is run because that's something that's going to happen in any RPG setting. You have
Mm,
your sort of vibe check with it, but I just thought the information was being conveyed to new players terribly because all it felt like is that it felt like someone handed me the rules for a Star Trek setting but no setting guide and we're like, okay, run a Star Trek game. I'm like, I haven't watched it, I don't know, I don't know how to do this. Like if someone gave me the rules for a Star Wars game and didn't give me a lot of setting information, I'm okay. I can muddle through, I know enough about that one. But that's because I've been more exposed to it. And when I made a video about like the Forgotten Realms and how I didn't like that it was the default setting, people were like commenting like, "Well, it's because you haven't read all the novels." I'm like, "Yeah, that's my fucking point."
ah,
That's kind of
ah.
exactly my point. So if you want people to play in the Forgotten Realms, you need to do what they're about to do, which is yeah, perfect. Give us a game master's guide and a player's guide. I hope those are great. I would love if those solve all my problems that I had with the way 5e gave us the Forgotten Realms because I really was not happy with how that information was being given to players. So just like by default, not setting these games in the Forgotten Realms anymore, like the core books are not that. That's already an improvement because it was such this weird middle ground of like we're kind of making Forgotten Realms books, but also we're not telling you enough about the Forgotten Realms because we don't want to lock you into it. And I'm like, then just don't. Just pick one or the
Mm.
other. Like make a Forgotten Realms game or make it agnostic, which is what they've done now, which I have my own complicated feelings about, but I still think it was a preference over giving us nothing. Like it's in the Forgotten Realms, figure it out. No, don't do that. Because and that problem was they didn't know they were making a game for new players. They
Right.
didn't know 5e was going to find the huge new audience it did. So like again, I don't I do kind of blame the developers. I don't hold them too much to task for it because I don't think they realized what they were doing. You know,
Yeah. It's like, you read all the Salvatore. You know what we're talking about, right? It's like, oh,
right? It's like, well, that may have been
did
true
everybody?
for
Everybody
the
read
audience
all
that
of
had
those?
stuck around, but it wasn't true for the new folks.
Hmm. Um, all right. I'm going to ask you because you are much more plugged in than I am to the Darrington press world. I love me some Critical Role. Don't get me wrong, but Daggerheart's about to drop, and it feels quiet. And am I just like out of the loop? I'm just not receiving the noise of it all, or like I don't know. I expected way more buzz and excitement right now.
It's strange because they are running games of it on their channel, but they're not running games in fantasy settings. So it's like sort of we're in this weird sort of like middle ground with their channel where I'm hoping that my guess is that when the game actually comes out, which again, maybe we will be proven right by the time this video comes out. But my guess is that once it's actually out, they're going to start doing more sort of advertising for it. I don't know if that was the right call, but
Mm.
like maybe I don't know. Maybe people got really sort of tired, like because they just went through this with Candela Obscura, where they were running lots and lots of Candela games as the game was up for sale, before it was for sale or when it was on pre-sale still, and maybe they got the reception that it wasn't satisfying for people. Like I think there's definitely an argument that Critical Role's audience likes being in on the rules with the players. Certainly with D&D, that is definitely true. So I wonder if that's why. I don't know for sure. That would be um my only kind of guess is that they want people to get their hands on it so that people can be following along with the rules and see what the players are getting wrong. Um I don't know. We'll find out because I know they're starting to do some videos where it's like, "Hey, I'm the designer and I'm on Instagram or whatever," and I'm like, they're not even posting these to YouTube from what I can tell, at least not to the Critical Role channel. So it is a little curious, but also they may be like just trying to get it out, trying to get it out the door because it is a smaller company.
And it is such
And I think
a
the sort of problem with well, maybe not the problem, one of the obstacles that they have is that it's not being designed by many members of their on-camera talent,
mm,
right? Like, so for example, if you have MCDM, both of the obviously Matt Colville is the face of the channel. He's not one of the main designers, but he is part of the team, so he can be on camera and talk about it. And they've also been bringing on James Ernticasso a lot to be an on-camera talent. Critical Role has much more distinct on-camera talent, and very few of them have been like working on the game full time because they have other jobs in the company. So that may be the problem they have. I'm not sure. It is a little strange, but also um maybe they are about to slam us with a whole bunch of stuff.
it is such a TTRPG like industry specific thing where like we're gonna spend 90% of our ad budget before we have a product people can buy. It's a
Yeah,
very like not a lot of other businesses operate in that manner. So like I could understand being like, yeah, once people can hand us dollars and receive the thing,
right.
then we'll
Immediately,
push.
maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, because honestly, once like the 20th hits, when you do your online purchase, you'll get the PDF immediately. Maybe that's what they're waiting for. Um, but also like they're a little strange. Like Darrington Press is the only TTRPG company right now that doesn't really kickstart their products,
Mm.
because they don't have to, because they've got that Critical Role money. So I am a little surprised that they don't have more in advertising, but they may just. My wonder is that they're just maybe spread too thin. Um,
Mm.
I don't know. It is a little strange, but I have just like this week. This is the week of the 13th. I have been seeing more like Instagram shorts, and I guess they're on their individual YouTube channel where the developers are actually talking about the game, and so maybe that's them starting to get their feet wet as far as promotional. And they've been doing a collaboration with oh, what is the channel?
Mm.
A
Hmm.
YouTube channel that I follow, Nerdy Nightly. Maybe that's not their actual play channel, but they've been doing a collaborative actual play. Um, so I'm a little surprised that that's been happening not on their own channel. Um, all right, maybe it has been. Maybe it has been happening on Daggerheart Press. Actually, maybe I'm a liar. Uh, maybe I'm mistaken. Um, so yeah, we'll see. I do think it's so funny when people are like, "Are they going to stay with D&D for campaign 4?" And I'm like, "No, obviously not." It's insane that people think that's the case. Why would they? First of all, they'd have to switch to 2014 from 2014 to 2024 anyway, or probably would. So why bother doing that? Why not just go to their game that they own? And also, like, I think the reason people think that is because there's a lot of fans who only watch Critical Role because they're fans of D&D. I don't think Critical Role wants those fans exclusively. If you're not willing to keep watching the show, if they switch systems, I think that you're maybe not the sort of loyal follower that they want. They want people who are going to sort of stick with them as they transition over. Now they definitely lost viewers as they've played other systems, but that's because they've only played other systems for like one shots and miniseries. So I don't know. I think it's insane that anyone's like, well, what are they going to use for campaign 4? And I'm like, Daggerheart. They're going to use Daggerheart. I
It
think it's more interesting to
is,
debate, are they going to stay in Exandria? That's a more
mm,
interesting question. And I think probably, but I can see the argument against. But I don't think there's any reality where they stay with 2014 D&D. That feels crazy to me.
man, I am with you. It is very validating to hear you talking that way because you're whatever. You're closer to the heart of it than I am. But like that's been my position for a while. And I specifically didn't ask you that question because I didn't want to put you on the spot and get you on
Yeah,
record before we know. But like, why wouldn't they? It would be a wild
right.
misstep to not
Yeah,
start whatever campaign for like Exandria, give or take. I could see them getting away from that the way things are. There's Exandria fans out there as much as they're D&D
right.
and Critical Role fans. There are Exandria fans. So like, yes, there's an argument for that, but I can't see them unless the Monopoly man shows up with bags of money. Like there are some edge cases I could see it happening, but for the most part, the wisest decision for them financially and artistically is to hew to their to their own truth, go with Daggerheart, and
Yeah,
just fully embrace it. And unless they're cooking up something else we don't know about, which seems wildly
that would be
improbable.
insane.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the smartest move is stay in Exandria, make sure campaign 4 is a continuation of the previous stories so that it feels more like essential viewing.
Mm.
And then do it in a new system. Yes, you will lose some people. I don't think you needed them. Now, I have not always agreed with the way that Critical Role holds the hand of some of their more frustrating fan base members. So we'll see. But I don't think it makes any sense because again, the other option is they either stay in 2014 D&D, which why,
Mm.
or they move over. Like you can make the argument because they know the system better. If you watch the show, no, they don't. Like I say this with love, no, they don't,
No, they don't.
and that's okay. That's their game. Who gives a shit? But like, if you're watching the show, frustrated that they don't know D&D better, then either watch them play Daggerheart, which is a simpler game that they're going to know better because they helped build it, or stop watching. Boo hoo hoo. I don't. I'm not mad if the people who are mad that they're playing D&D wrong stop watching the show. Like if they're if that's the only reason you watch Critical Role is because they're playing D&D, there are other actual play shows where they play it more successfully. Like that, I don't know what you are getting from the show if that's the reason you watch it. There are actual play shows that hew to the game system way better. Um, if you like other things about it, then it shouldn't matter if they switch systems. That's that's my argument.
I'm excited to find out. I'm glad we
And
are
because
meeting
like again,
today
if they
to
switch
get
to
it on the record.
2024, they already get the rules wrong for D&D anyway. Now imagine they have two editions battling in their head, two recent editions battling in their heads. Like that would be, I think, much harder. Yes, there will be some hiccups with transitioning to a new system. There always are, but I think a Daggerheart's a cleaner break because it's such a different system. It's 2d12s, it's cards, it's a whole different ball game. So
And
yeah, it would
literally
make no sense to
bespoke.
me. Now, I will say I was also in the camp of if you're doing campaign 3, split up the party, you need get a smaller table, do something where you have two competing teams. Uh I think that now would be the wrong time to make a move that drastic. You want to make campaign 4 feel as much like campaigns 1, 2, and 3 as possible. So the transition is more seamless. The reason I said that is because you have to start giving Matt a break. Like you have to start making sure that you have a way to keep going when Matt eventually like doesn't want to do this every day. Um I don't think they're going to do that now. I think for campaign 4 they're going to keep the format as close as possible and still do a 50 plus episode campaign. Um, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. At the very least, it'll be an interesting uh whenever that happens, probably later this in the next couple months, I would guess is when we gonna get campaign 4 news. So
Yeah, and transitioning away from 5e it preserves Mercer a little bit more. You get a little less DM burnout with a lighter system, especially one that you've custom built yourself, or at least have had hand in.
yeah, I think that they are also like just they don't want to be locked into Wizards of the Coast mistakes anymore. You know,
Right.
like feel however you want to about the company and the designers and Hasbro and whether you keep buying stuff from companies that you have at the very least disagreements with their practices. Feel however you want about that. They were kind of stuck when all this stuff happened with Critical Role and or with D&D, where they were still doing advertisements for D&D Beyond, and they were like, we can't talk about this. We literally can't criticize this, other than to say, hey, thank God it's over when it happened in end of January. You know, that's all they could do to comment on it. Any other thing that happens with Wizards of the Coast, they can't talk about it, but they will certainly get comments about it. Hey, how can you keep
Mm,
working for Wizards of the Coast? How can you keep playing this
mm,
game? Blah 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 blah.
mm.
Just get out of it. Just get out of that ecosystem. You know, like you've already published 2 campaign setting books. Um, you don't have to keep making those D&D specific, but you can. But or just do something else. You know, see what your audience will buy. See if they're willing to buy a Daggerheart book set in Jorhas.
Hmm.
Why not?
I'm curious. I am curious.
It's gonna be
Mike, we've
interesting.
been
This is kind of like I like that this is sort of an uncharted territory for them. Because I like
hmm,
it when they're in uncharted territory and have to make judgment calls, even if I wouldn't agree with them. You know, just be like, okay, let's see what they do.
give me the new stuff. That's try something. Surprise me. Let's go.
I just think like if they don't play Daggerheart, they're basically asking you, well, why would you play it? We and like they're making you come up with the answer. Whereas they could have the greatest commercial for their own game ever. So like when someone says, why wouldn't they switch from D&D? I don't think there's any good answer for why wouldn't they switch other than the biggest argument I've seen is that it's going to be very strange for them not to open the show by saying we play Dungeons and Dragons. We play Dungeons and Dragons. Like,
Mm.
yeah, man, things change. Like sometimes stuff changes and you have to make your peace with it. Yeah, they're not going to open their game that way anymore.
Yeah, a new season of the show comes out. The opening is different. You feel weird
Yeah.
about it one time, and then it's your new favorite song or whatever. Like you,
Unless it's Avengers Earth's Mightiest Heroes, which they changed the opening theme song. We brought it full circle to the Avengers video we talked about earlier because they changed the theme song by dropping most of the lyrics and just having Nick Fury talk over it, and it sucked all season long.
oh,
I'm
all
not
right.
someone who gets over the things when they change, but I will eventually decide if it's a hill to die on or not. I will notice the change and be like, that's still different. It's still different and weird. And my potentially undiagnosed but probably neurospicy brain is still like, man, you changed it.
But this
But
better be
sometimes
perfect.
sometimes you have to change things and it's okay. We'll all get through it together.
Yes. Dude, I'm so glad we got to sit down and do this. I appreciate you going on the
Same.
record right before.
I know what watch them turn out to play campaign 4 in like Blades in the Dark or something. We're like, what? Why?
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, I'm on your side, man. I believe wholeheartedly that like if they don't, they're kind of giving up on their new thing before it
Yeah,
started.
yeah, yeah.
So,
Unless campaign 4's format is wildly different, it doesn't make any sense for them not to go with the game they sold us as a perfect game for long running campaigns like we tend to play, right? That being said, if they suddenly played like DC-20 or MCDM's game, that would be hilarious.
I mean, reading the tea
That
leaves,
would
I
be
think
fascinating.
I
They're like,
can
hey, campaign
see.
4, we're playing Tales of the Valiant. What? All right. I
Yeah.
mean, Rising Tide lifts all ships, I guess.
I mean,
Or
I'm
they
here
just
for
change
that.
it every episode. They just rotate through different systems to show them that they're all the same. That would be hilarious.
I think there's an impulse there that they're not going to act on because they kind of have tried to and proved that the main campaign is the main
Yeah,
campaign is
yeah,
is the headliner. I think there's a world where they would have loved to. The only way campaign 4 isn't Daggerheart if they're as far as I'm concerned is that there isn't a campaign 4. It's just a
right,
bunch of mini campaigns.
right. I would agree with that. I think that's probably a more accurate um, assessment of what would have to be different in it for them to not do the obvious thing that they're going to do.
Yeah. All right,
But
I'm going to get you back on here to talk about it.
we'll be
um,
uh we'll be chatting about that, I'm sure, in the next couple months to see what
heck
happens.
yeah. Until then, again, everybody go check out Supergeek Mike. Links down below and in all the places, and then in the end
Over here,
card very
maybe?
soon because
Maybe over
this
here?
is the
Over
end
here?
of the show. No,
Over
it's up
here?
here somewhere. It's one of those. Actually, you'll be. I'm going to put it over. Oh, whoa, hey, all right, we're cutting this off one. Thanks everybody for hanging out with us. I hope you had a good time. I know I did. Mike, thanks again. I'll talk to you soon.
Talk to you
Bye.
then.